Hi, my name is Charles Harrison, and this is my final project for my class in Critical Issues in American History. I'm going to go through 5 different prompts here that were given to me by the instructor. I hope you enjoy. First prompt was America's founding documents and how they affect us in contemporary society. We have the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I added a picture here of the National Archives Museum in the United States that have all 3 of those documents in original form. The first, the Declaration of Independence, was adopted July 4th, 1776. It was the United States breaking away from the British rule. Added here in contemporary society, God made all men equal and gave them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What the document spells out. We are the freest nation in the world. And this document laid ground for the start of the nation and was followed by the Constitution and the government we have today. No longer under British rule. I added this join or die, which was actually against the fight with the French, but I felt that it did draw a point of the colonies gaining together to fight for freedom. This was from May 9th, 1754. Benjamin Franklin published the cartoon Join or Die, a political cartoon. The next is the Constitution. It was signed September 17th, 1787. It established the government of the United States. It is the fundamental law of the United States. It's broken into 3 parts. The preamble, how our government is structured to this day, and amendments, which can be added and were added. It grants inherent rights. It is a document and government governed by the people, for the people, and it establishes a separation of powers. Transformed the idea of government, even to this day. It's still the greatest governmental document ever written. Established no longer a king, but a people who elect representatives. In the U.S., the people are the king, if it were to be drawn out as far as a monarch. It's not a monarch, but to establish that people have more power than the governing body. And this led to the Bill of Rights also being written, which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. I put here inside the National Archive Museum, you can encounter the original documents of the United States and the rotunda of the Charters of Freedom, the permanent home of the Declaration of Independence, Constitution of the United States, and Bill of Rights. These 3 documents, known collectively as the Charter of Freedoms, are instrumental to the founding and philosophy of the United States. Third, the Bill of Rights was adopted in December 15th, 1791. It's the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. It establishes what rights Americans have in relation to their government, guarantees civil rights and liberties to the people. Some of those would be speech, religion, protection of yourself and also property, due process, law and order, and states' rights. It reserves all powers not delegated to the federal government to the people. And establishes rights are given from God, the supreme judge of the world. Right here I took a picture from Britannica explaining in simple terms the Bill of Rights. First Amendment, freedom of speech, religion, press. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Third Amendment, people don't have to house soldiers. Fourth Amendment, no searches without reason. Fifth Amendment, rights related to trials. Sixth Amendment, rights if you are charged with a crime. Seventh Amendment, rights for a civil case. Eighth Amendment, no unreasonable fines or treatment. Ninth Amendment, people have other rights. So these aren't all of the rights that Americans had. These were just the basic ground level. This is what the people have civil rights and liberties to. The 10th Amendment, the states can make no laws, or the states can make laws as well. And so individual states can make different laws that don't necessarily involve other states. And these 10 laws or 10 rights that we have still reign today and give us our civil liberties and our freedoms that we enjoy. Second prompt, profound impact of wars in American history. Go through major conflicts like the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the World Wars. The influence that they had politically, socially, culturally, economic, the nation's identity, and the global standings. And third, specific examples of transformative role in shaping the United States. Here, I added one of the most iconic statues that we have from Iwo Jima, the Marine Corps hoisting up the flag. And it's from the Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal, February 23rd, 1945. The major conflicts involved the Revolutionary War from April 19th, 1775 to September 3rd, 1783. The Civil War, April 12th, 1861 to April 9th, 1865. And World War I, July 28th, 1914 to November 11th, 1918. And World War II, September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945. I added a picture here from the Revolutionary War of Washington crossing the Delaware, which is a major turning point in the Revolutionary War. It's opened up our path to success, and it's one of the most iconic paintings as far as the founding of America and our fight for freedom. Influence, politically, the Revolutionary War made the U.S. a country on basic level, gave freedom, broke away from British rule. The Civil War, at a basic level, politically, it abolished slavery, with the South wanting to keep it and the North succeeding and winning. It laid ground for the abolishment of slavery. World War I made the U.S. a superpower. It's at the time we were a smaller country, and this really put us on the map. Show other nations that America had a will to fight for freedom. World War II established the United Nations. And here I put from the Civil War, built between 1914 and 1922, a statue of Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial. The theme of the building represents the Union at the time. The 36 columns on the outside wall stand for 36 states in the Union, and this was at the time of Lincoln's death. Great American, had a few things that might not 100% agree with, but in the end, looking back, it was necessary to abolish the evil that was slavery. Influence, socially, the Revolutionary War. We became the land of the free and the home of the brave. We stood up against the world superpower at the time, the biggest army and military force, and won. The Civil War, again, this abolished slavery, allowed um, black Americans to be free and enter into society. Was still some hold back as far as segregation and Jim Crow laws, but slavery was no longer on the table. World War One brought about women's rights, um, or at least started the idea of. It created a lot of shell shock, which we know today now as PTSD. And it also was the start of a lot of propaganda campaigns that pushed for the war effort. World War II, big expansion in labor, brought about a sense of community and also a lot of urban growth. This is a poster from 1917 during the First World War of Uncle Sam. I want you for U.S. Army, nearest recruiting station, to help fight in the war. Influence culturally, the Revolutionary War gave the U.S. a national identity and gave equal rights to people. It involved some political participation. Was revolved around meritocracy, and also it gave religious freedom. The Civil War, a lot of literature, music, women depiction, South out agriculture boom. The North was more urban and industrialized. World War One, art, patriotic messages, Uncle Sam, the idea of heroism. World War Two, we had a lot of war-related pop culture in movies and radio. Music production was halted for wartime needs, and overall, just again, a sense of community, and brought people together to fight against the evils. I put here a picture produced by Westinghouse during World War II for the War Production Coordinating Committee. Was part of the national campaign in the United States to enlist women in the workforce, as a lot of men went off into war, left a lot of jobs open and production needs, and so women came to that need and helped win the war on the home front. Influence on the economic standing, we have the Revolutionary War. The British restrictions were lifted, allowing trade, manufacturing, and settlement growth. The Civil War, there was $3.3 billion in spending. Over 750,000 people died, which is the most died in any war the U.S. has fought, and at the time, and 1.5 billion in destruction. It's a very costly war against our own people. A lot of spending and a lot of destruction. World War One, there's employment that grew from the Industrial Revolution. There was trade and industry growth leading to consumer culture. World War II, a lot of GDP growth, gross national product growth, as war efforts actually spawned more jobs and openings converting a lot of factories and industries into war-related industries and production. And taxes were raised to fund a lot of these war efforts. Here is an American war poster explaining sugar rations. So sugar was being conserved to provide for allied countries in Europe and support the war effort. It states your sugar ration is 2 pounds per month. We must confine our consumption of sugar to not more than 2 pounds per person per month in order to provide a restricted ration to England, France, and Italy. The nation's identity. Revolutionary War gave the U.S. a national identity and solidified the U.S. and the country that we are today. The Civil War, a lot of people see it as a divine mission of equality and liberty. World War I was a worldwide. We became a worldwide champion of peace and freedom. And World War II increased wave of patriotism in the U.S. Here I put a picture of Betsy Ross showing Major Ross and Robert Morris how she cut the stars of the American flag. George Washington sits in the chair on the left. It's a picture by J.L.G. Ferris, and was our first U.S. flag. Global standings. The Revolutionary War gave courage to fight for independence to other nations. The Civil War ensured continuing support of international abolishment of slavery. World War I made the U.S. a global power, and World War II from a global power to a leader of the free world. And here I put a picture of a sailor returning from a World War II. VJ Day in Times Square, photographed by Alfred Eisenstadt, published in Life magazine in 1945, with the caption, in New York Times Square, a white-clad girl clutches her purse and skirt as an uninhibited sailor plants his lips squarely on hers. Iconic picture of returning from war. Influence. Revolutionary. Specific examples. The Revolutionary War obviously influenced the Declaration, or was influenced by the Declaration, Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. The Civil War gave way to the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. World War I, we see the introduction of Uncle Sam and propaganda for war efforts. We also see shell shock and a lot of returning Americans. In World War II, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, we see the introduction of the atomic bomb, which the U.S. had been working on with the Manhattan Project, but actually was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a photograph of the atomic cloud rising over Nagasaki, Japan, on August 9, 1945, from the National Archives, records of the Office of War Information. And then the third prompt, significant role of religion shaping the United States. I'll go through various religions, practices, and movements, the influence it had politically, socially, culturally, different time periods, specific examples and impact on the nation's identity and religious freedom and diversity. Here I put the signing of the Constitution, which in the Constitution we see God-given rights, and what was the basis of our founding, no longer ruled by man, but people who who look to a higher power, God. Religions, I put a couple here of early religions. Got Ang- Anglicanism, which is the Church of England. Methodism, which was the Reformed Church of England. Baptist, which their faith is the matter between God and the individual, um, which is different from the Church of England. Um, Congregationalism was the separation of church and state. Presbyterianism is a unified body of Christ. Lutheranism, grace through faith. Quakerism, inner light and direct communion with God. Mennonite, which looked towards respect, peace, and service. Moravian, all are spiritual equal to each other. Puritans, reforms of Church of England, didn't go far enough. And obviously we had Native American religions, which mostly revolved around the idea of Turtle Island, that the U.S. Was on the back of a turtle. I put here a picture of George Washington in Revolutionary times, praying. A lot of our founding fathers are known as deists, but majority of them were actually very religious. Maybe not always showed it in public, but through writings and documents, we see that the founding of our nation was a bunch of people escaping religious freedom in hopes that the new world would provide exile and a return to man and God. Modern popular religions, put a few here. Protestantism, justification of sinners through faith alone. Catholicism, Catholic Church structure with infallibility of the Pope. Mormonism, believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. Judaism, God is one, has no form, actively involved in world affairs. And Islamic, Muhammad is the messenger of God. I put here a picture of a book that I really enjoyed that can turn any non-believer into a believer, I believe, which backs through scientific and thought process on how there is a God, and it's a book by Norman L. Geisler and Frank Turret, with the foreword by David Limbaugh. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Really recommend this book to anybody, even if you are a believer, to strengthen your faith and be able to bring somebody out of their atheism. Religions, movements. We see the First Great Awakening in the 1730s through the 1740s. A lot had to do with Jonathan Edwards and his preaching. Also, George Whitefield. He had his preaching tour in January 1739. Then we also have the Second Great Awakening, 1790 to the 1840s. Barton Stone week-long revival in 1790, which basically sparked off the Second Great Awakening. I also put here the Assemblies of God formed, April 1914. And Joseph Smith came on the scene April 6, 1830. Then we have the Salem witch trials from 1692 to 1693. And then Zionism, the Jewish religion should have a homeland in 1897. And put here Jonathan Edwards' sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, from 1741, was one of the foundational texts of the First Great Awakening. Influence, politically, 94% of the founding documents of the U.S. come from the Bible. 34% are direct citations, 60% ideas derived from the Bible. Social and cultural. Church in Hebrew actually means ecclesia, meaning town square, and it's where the community assembles, or assembly basically. And law and order in that town square derived from good and evil, and what is good or evil is coded from creation in all of us. We have the inherent idea of what good and evil is, and that's through divine intervention. I put here in 1630 a picture of a group of Puritans led by John Winthrop established the Massachusetts Bay Colony after fleeing religious persecution in England, which also was when the Mayflower Compact was sent off. Religions, examples. John Revere. I thought this was very interesting. When he did his famous ride, he went around and rang church bells because the church was the town squares where everybody talked, where politics were done, where business was done, where the entire community would meet together and learn, take in the Word of God, but also discuss different matters. And so when he went around and did his famous ride, he actually rang church bells to notify the entire city. I also put the example that in God we trust is on all of our currency. We are a nation, one nation under God. And then I also put Blackstone's formula, which is rather 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer, which correlates to Genesis 18:16 through 33. Abraham pleads for Sodom to God. And then I also put the preamble to the Constitution, mentions God 3 times and is the law of the land and structures daily living. I put a picture of a coin here. Congress approved adding "In God We Trust" to the 1 cent and 2 cent coins on February 22nd, 1864. We now enjoy it on all of our currency. The fourth prompt, transformative effects on technology on American business and military. I'll go through specific advancements and innovations, implications on industries, economic growth, military strategies, national security, and then specific examples on profound changes in both sectors. I love this picture. Shows men during the Industrial Revolution having lunch up in the sky, building the buildings that we enjoy today. It's a picture, Lunch Atop a Skyscraper by Charles C. Ebbets. Advancements and innovations. The military, we went from muskets to rifles to machine guns. We went from cannons to grenades to bombs to atomic bombs. And we went from horseback to cars to tanks and airplanes. Business, we had national currency, railways, stock market, consumer culture, assembly lines, farming equipment. I put a picture here of modern technology and war. It's far surpasses what we've seen in the past. It's a drone, military drone. The Sea Astrals military and fixed wing ISR. Implication on industry. With the win over the British, American industry boomed into World War I, creating jobs and helped turn to war efforts in World War II. Business and trade turned America's economy into a consumer culture and a world strength with taxes for national security while also creating a boom in building and infrastructure. And we also see the introduction of radios and motion pictures, which helped push both sectors as one can advertise and spread war propaganda, but also it brought Americans together with sports, radio talk shows, and movies that helped build the culture that we enjoy today. Um, Put a picture here of Babe Ruth, famous baseball star, who really helped bring America together with America's pastime, which is known as baseball. Specific examples: war efforts in World War II led to industry and technology as military strategy, focusing on production and led to economic growth and national security. And then with the use of assembly lines and production, factories' products became cheaper and more accessible, and the Manhattan Project gave the U.S. military power above all that led to a Cold War with the Soviet Union. I'll put a picture here of the two bombs, or at least what they look like. Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were like these. This is detailed from the front page of the New York Times, December 7th, 1960. And fifth prompt, expansion of civil rights in American history, with women's rights, minority rights, and then marginalized groups within those two, and outside, but overall the women's rights and minority rights. I put here a quote from Thomas Jefferson and a picture of the Constitution. We in America do not have a government by the majority. We have a government by the majority who participate. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. And this dives into the heart of our country, that voting is very important, as we're a government by the people, but the people who participate. And with the opening of the civil rights for women and minority groups, we encompass what America is today. For women's rights, I got a couple dates as far as major milestones. 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton calls for women's suffrage. First planned convention in the U.S. to talk about women's rights. In 1890, Wyoming actually became the first state to allow women to vote, and this is before the 19th Amendment. 1900, every state passes laws to allow married women to own property and keep their own wages. Big milestone for property ownership, and then as far as wages go. 1916, Jeannette Rankin becomes first woman elected as a U.S. state rep. And then 1919, Congress passes the 19th Amendment, allowing women to vote. 1920, 19th Amendment is ratified, giving women the right to vote for the first time in U.S. history. This was a nationwide, not just individual states. Put a picture here of headquarters opposed to women's suffrage. I know, or at least I've read, that a lot of the women at the time actually didn't want the right to vote because it also came with specific duties as far as military drafts and other things that would oppose. But at the time, majority of the politicians were men. So the men actually gave the vote to ratify and issue the 19th Amendment. This is a picture of 5 men look at the material posted in the window of the National Anti-Suffrage Association headquarters, Harrison Ewing Library of Congress. Then for minority rights, some key dates: 1863 Emancipation Proclamation. 1867, Fisk University actually offers education to Black Americans. 1868, the 14th Amendment ratified. 1870, the 15th Amendment ratified. 1946, the segregated bus system ruled unconstitutional in Boynton versus Virginia, which actually led to 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. Started when Rosa Parks is arrested. 1957, Little Rock 9 attempt to enroll in Central High School. 1963 was the March on Washington. 1964, Civil Rights Act is passed. 1965, Voting Rights Act is passed. And 1968, Fair Housing Act is passed. It's a picture of the March on Washington. It's a wide-angle view of the marchers along the mall, showing the reflecting pool and the Washington Monument during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963, courtesy the National Archives and Records Administration. And then the final slide here, I put actually the preamble to the Constitution, which I think really stands miles above, again, any document, any political document that's ever existed. Just in the first preamble. And it says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and the prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." And that is the end of my presentation. Hope you enjoyed. There's my citations there. Thank you.